Shinamurtaye Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om Tat Sat. So, we are progressing, and there was a discussion of the verse in which it was explained, we were trying to discuss the Trivida Bhedas and the absence of these three types of Vedas in the Brahman. So, what is that Brahma Tattva? If somebody asks us later on, we would say it's Sajatya, Vijatya, Swagata, Veda, Rahita. That is what is Brahman. There is no Sajatya Veda, there are no two Brahmans available, there is no Swagata Veda, there is no part and whole distinction there. Brahman is not a physical entity, and therefore it cannot have the distinction we have vis-a-vis our limbs, our parts. Or a city has some distinction vis-a-vis different parts of the city. The Brahman is not like a city, it's not a physical universe. And there is no Vijatya Bheda. That doubt can come because we might think Brahma is different from Jagat or Sansara or Jiva. So there is some Bheda. Brahman is one class of reality. Another class of reality is this Sansara, the Jiva Jagat, the Prani Jagat, the Udvida Jagat. We can go and argue like that. Different class of realities. That also is refuted. What do you mean by Vijatya Bheda? Vijatya Bheda can be established Ghata Patona. A jar or a pot is not a piece of cloth. That means when somebody gives you a piece of cloth, you argue and say that you are giving me a piece of cloth and there is no ghata in it. So, pate ghata bhavaha. In the pata that somebody is giving you, there is absence of ghata. The cloth is given to you means there is no pot there. You are getting a piece of cloth, and vice versa. So, you mute yourself, Userva. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. So, if somebody gives you X, you can say there is no Y in it. So, X is different from Y. That is Vijatya Veda. Y belongs to one class of reality or one class of entities, and X belongs to one class of entities. But there is a logical fallacy involved here. You cannot talk about Vijatya Veda between two entities if one of these two is not an entity at all. It's an imagined reality. So then you cannot talk about Vijatya Veda because that is an imaginary category. That is what he's trying to explain, that you might say that samsara, this phenomenal reality, the phenomenal world, is different from the Brahman. In logic, Indian logic, Nyaya Sastra, there is a word called pratiyogitvam. So if I say this is one hand and there is a wristwatch, the hand and the wristwatch are different. So there is a pratiyogitva of these hand in the wristwatch. Pratiyogitva means yasya bhavaha sa pratiyogi. There is absence of this palm in this wristwatch, or the absence of wristwatch in the palm. So when you say there is absence of the wristwatch in the hand, there is a pratiyogitva of this watch in the hand. That's a logical category. Yasya bhavaha sa pratyogi. Whenever you are talking about absence of something, that becomes a competing entity which is not here. We are talking about a hand. There is no watch here. So the simple point which is being conveyed here is, if you are talking about Vijatya Bheda means the difference on account of they belonging to two different kinds of realities. If that is what you are trying to do, if that is what you are trying to convey, kindly you can switch off your videos and your microphones you can mute. So when you are trying to sort of convey that there is absence of, let's say there is a girl called Sita and there is Sri Ram. Let's imagine, I'm not talking about the mythology, or let's imagine that you have Ganeshji and Lakshmiji being worshipped in the Diwalis. A bit of dualism, let's accept it. So there is absence of Ganeshji in Lakshmiji. Both are divine entities. Or there is a bike and a car. So you're saying there is absence of the bike in the car. But bike and a car, both are bhavatmaka. These are real substances. They do exist. Then you can talk about pratiyogita, logically speaking. You cannot fantasize about pratiyogita between two entities, so-called entities, where one exists, the other one doesn't. The other one, as such, doesn't. It's just an imagined thing. You cannot establish vijatiya bheda. The easiness has to be common to both of them. That is the moot logical point which is being conveyed. And that is the point we will do in the next verse. So I will share that text with you. Yeah, I can either share this or I can say the Kalyana Piyusha Vakhya. Just give me 1 second. It'll open in 1 second. Open file. Give me 1 second. Just 1 second. It's going to open in a second. We'll also toss up in the Ramakrishna Tika because it's a little easy to follow. I'm just bringing it here. Advaita Viveka Prakarana. No, we are not yet. We are doing Tattva Viveka. Panchabhuta Viveka. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. I'll just find out the page number. What is the page number here? 71. Yeah, I'll be there in 1 second. Yeah. Now I'm sharing. Have a look at it. It's coming. So this is what we have finished discussing. Sadantaram sajatiyam na vailakshanya varjanat namo rupo padivedam vina naiva sato vida. Sad antaram sajatiyam. So if you have another sat, another Brahman, you can say there is a sajatiya veda. However, na, that is not possible. Vailakshanya varjanat. But you are not showing some distinction. It's only one Brahman. Sadeva Somya idam agra asit ekam eva advitiyam. It's only one. So how do you have Sajatya Veda? There are no two Brahmans. That was refuted. Swagata Veda also has been refuted because it is Niravayava. It doesn't have any physical framework. Namo rupo padi bhedam bina na eva sato vida. Now, if you are saying that ghatakasha is different from mathakasha, the space in a court is different from the space in a temple. So you are using two different adjectives, temple space and courtroom space. And you're saying the courtroom sky is different from the college sky. And in the, say, you can say that the sky in a temple or a church, the skies are different. He's saying, no, you are using nama rupa. There are certain descriptive adjectives you're adding to that particular noun in order to imagine distinction. That is not how, that's not how Sajatya Bheda is established. If you're saying one finger, there is another finger, there is another finger. So there is Sajatya Bheda between these three fingers. You cannot talk about Sajatya Veda if there is actually nothing, it's just one thing. You are just trying to distinguish between one thing, you are trying to count it 1, 2, 3, 4 by adding some adjectives that we have discussed yesterday. So there is no Sajatya Veda. Now, Sato Vijatya Vedam api Purvokta Disa eva nirasyati Vijatya iti. So even Vijatya Veda, that the difference on account of their belonging to two different classes of things, that is also refuted. And what is this? Is in the verse number 25. Bijatiya masattatu na khalvastiti gamyate nasyatah pratiyogitvam vijatiyadhida kutaha. Then this is also being refuted. And how is he trying to refute it? He is refuting it with a very interesting argument. He's saying that you cannot talk about Vijatya Veda without Asattad Vijatiyam iti. So if you are talking about Vijatya Veda, that itself is an imaginary thing, it's not real. Na khalu asti, because if you say sansara brahma satya jagana mithya, all this propancha doesn't even exist. Na khalu asti iti gamyade ataha sataha pratiyogitvam na bhavet. You cannot have anything which is a competing entity at par with Brahman. I'm not talking about Sajatya Veda, I'm talking about Vijatya Veda. In order to even imagine our competing reality, which doesn't belong to the same class of reality, but is a different class of reality, which is competing with this, such kind of a pratiyogitvam, such kind of a competing reality that you're talking about will be valid only if that reality as such exists. But that's not existing. Why? Because other than Brahma Satya, you are saying everything is mithya, because that has been refuted by Shruti. Nothing has been, you cannot prove anything as fundamentally real. The Shruti says, Sadeva Somya Idama Asid Ekam Eva Advityam. It's without a second. And the Neha Nanasti Kinchana, there is only one. If you imagine there are many, you're going to hell. Just imagine how powerful is the Upanishad. It says, imagine, we are talking about caste, language, and mute yourselves using one. Can you kindly mute yourselves? Thank you. So whosoever is imagining that there is a competing reality, the Upanishad says that Neha Nanasti Kinchana. There is only one reality. Anybody who imagines duality, diversity, multiplicity, we talk about caste and language and gender and nationality and all that. These are at the level of phenomena, and this is at the level of what you call Vyavaharika Satya. This is just a phenomenal reality with which we are interacting on a day-to-day basis. And this is infested with dualities, not fundamentally real. And if you accept these realities as fundamentally real, there is a warning. You're going to be in hell. Not a literal hell, because only Brahman is real. You'll be hell. Hell means you'll be perennially trapped in a state of ignorance, which means there's not going to be an end to our suffering if we start accepting this duality as fundamentally real. Therefore, it's refused that Vijatiya Bheda is not acceptable. Sataha Vijatiyam Asadeva Bhavati. What is distinct from Sat? Asat. Because we are talking about Vijatiya Bheda, which is different from Sat. What is different from Sat? What is different from truth? Falsehood. Vijatiya Bheda of truth is falsehood. Or what is false? Can it be a competing reality? Once you admit about Vijatiya Bheda of Brahman, which is Satchidananda Swarupa, what is Sat, which is truth. A competing reality, to be competitive, has to be bhavatmaka, at least it has to exist. But by the moment you're using the word Vijatiya, different from truth is false. Right? And he's saying Vijatiyam asad eva bhavati tattu nasti asad iti vitpatya. When you say sat, different from sat is asat, means nasti, it doesn't exist. What do you mean by there is a difference between pen and pencil? Pencil exists, pen exists. You can say that there is a pratiyogitva of the pen and the pencil. Fine, I don't have any problem. But anything false cannot be something which can compete with the truth. They don't belong to, I mean, they both don't exist at par. What do you think about a competing reality? It cannot be a competing reality. Vidya na asad iti avidyamanam eva iti gamyate khalu. That means it doesn't even exist. It's avidyamanam. It's not available. Ataha vijatiyad asad rupad pratiyogitvam asya sataha na sambhavati. You're imagining about a vijatiya bhedavan, bhedavat entity, right? Something which has that distinct reality, which is different from the sat, from the truth. But that is asat. What is different from sat is asat. So because here sat is not a specific sat, table, chair, watch. Yeah, so the watch is different from the table. But here you're talking about sat without any names and forms. Whatever you may imagine will become sat. If you are talking about a Vijatiya Bheda, it will become asat. Means it doesn't exist. It's false. What do you say? It's Vijatiya Bheda. There is no pratiyogitva. It cannot be a competing reality. So he is refuting the temptation on the part of the Nyayikas, the philosophical logicians of the Indian tradition, saying that you cannot imagine the Brahman to be at a transcendental plane, one supernatural reality, and the reality you see as phenomenal reality, which is also real. That's how they deal with it, and that's being refuted. There is nothing called transcendental, immanent, phenomenal. These are all words. Reality is one, and the ultimate reality has no second. There are no names and forms, and therefore any imagination of any form of distinction is just at best a presumption. It doesn't lead us anywhere. Why are we being told all this? In order to strengthen our conviction that the ultimate reality is one without a second. There is no male or female. There is no Brahmin or Kshatriya or Shudra. There is no India or Pakistan or Christian or Islam or Muslim. Nothing. Ultimately, there is one luminous truth which liberates. Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Brahma. That is that, Chit. It exists. It's consciousness, existence, consciousness, and bliss. That has that perfect luminosity, knowing which, reaching where, experiencing which, not an object of your experience, but as the truth itself, without any sense of agency, is the key to liberation, is the key to ultimate form of enlightenment. That is what the Shastra, the pedagogical methods through which they are trying to explain through so many argumentations, they are trying to convey to us. Ataha vijatiyat asad rupat pratiyogitvam asya satah na sambhavati. So whenever you're talking about a vijatiya, it has to be asad. And then you are saying you are identifying the competing reality of that asad that falls is that sadrupa Brahman. That is not possible. Pratiyogi abhave vijatyat vastunah vida bhedah kuta sampadyate. Without having that competing real, which has to be there as per your logic, how can you talk about vijatya bheda? It has to have some pratyogita. That your pratyogita is not competition examination here. Is that competing reality? Vijatya bheda. Therefore, it's not possible. That is what is being conveyed to us. Okay. And so we will go to the next verse, but before that, in order to make it a little more simple, I'll just also sort of make it, I'll just open it up, because in the Ramakrishna Tika, there's nothing, and therefore I shared the Kalyana Piyusha Vakya, and that is also one commentary. There are multiple commentaries on Panchadashi. So what is trying to be conveyed to us here is that Brahman is Akhanda Rupa, and it's free from the Trividha Bheda. So it is Trividha Bheda Bhava Van. There is no Bheda. It's free from those distinctions and separateness, whatever. And what are these three? Swagata, Sajatya, Vijatya. So this Trividha Bheda Sunya is the Brahman. There's no distinction whatsoever. And therefore, he's saying this, Vijatya Bheda Bhavaha. That is what is established in this particular shloka. What is that? Vijatya Bheda. Vijatya Bheda is essentially that Bheda, Tadrusha Bheda, Yatra Ekasya Jatyaha Anya Jatehe Vastu Asti. There is a class of things like horses, right? So it's a horse race, so you have horses. And then you have dogs. You also have dogs race. I'm not taking you to this famous Bob Marley, right? There's a dog race, there's a cat race, there's a human race. And there is a rat race. It's a beautiful song. It's a mocking commentary on capitalism and the crass materialism in which all of us are trapped, coming back to Vedanta. Bob Marley is a lovely character. So his songs are very appealing. So we have different kind of races. So the rats are different from the dogs. The rat race obviously is different from the human race. But there are different competing realities. So one class of things are different from another class of things. That is what is conveyed here. And therefore, what is he trying to say is that one class, another class. Brahman doesn't have a class of his own. And you cannot imagine about another class. It has no jati. For it to have a class, you have to have multiple entities belonging to one class, like rats, dogs, humans, plants, rivers. Brahman is just one. So there is no other category. Could there be, maybe it's only one of its kind. Let's imagine there is a dinosaur you find somewhere, one of its kind still existing. And then there are lions, they're different. No, that doesn't exist. Because what is different from truth or sat is asat. Once you accept that as asat, then it cannot constitute a class of reality. And it will not have that pratiyogita. And therefore, you cannot say it's having vijatya bheda vis-a-vis the Brahman. Okay? So, Ghatapada may be different, but you cannot attribute it, because for any pratiyogita, you have to have some sort of a dvaita sambandha, some kind of duality. Brahman is only one. And there is no class, and there is no other class which can be a competing reality, a competing entity for the Brahman. Therefore, there is nothing else other than Brahman, and therefore, that is refuted. Okay? In the Taittiriya Upanishad, okay, asan eva sa bhavati asad brahma iti che iti veda che. If you are the one who accept Brahman as asat, you have no existence. Why? That is the substratum of everything that you see. The one who denies the existence, the truthness, the true existence of the Brahman, He cannot exist because everything emanates out of it. Asti Brahma iti ched Veda santam et enam tato viduhu. That is what he's trying to say. If you know the Brahman as existing, as Sat, as truth, as infinite reality, everything else is possible. Everything else comes out of it. If you deny its existence, there is nowhere you can seek refuge, and then you become false yourself. Therefore, if you imagine Brahman as Asat, that doesn't exist. Okay? And then, if you are imagining Brahman as Asat, and then there is a reality which is Sat, no. If Brahman is Sat, the opposite of it is Asat, inferior, not competing. If you think Brahman is Asat, and there is Asat because you can't see it, and therefore there is a Sansara and everything, that is Sat. No. Because if you accept Brahman as Asat, nothing else can exist because it is the substratum of everything. That is how both the ways. There is a beautiful sentence. Asad rupasya vastunaha na swatantra sattabhavaha. There's something which is false, something which is imaginary. You cannot say it is absent here. Like, for example, you are seeing a snake in a rope. Snake is not real. And then the rope is removed. The snake has gone. Can you say this? Yeah, you can say. It's a way of speaking, but that has nothing to do with truth. That is just a manner of communication. So even though samsara is there and all that, because this is a superimposition on that substratum called the perfect reality, called the Brahman, you do not imagine Vijatiya Bheda between Jagat and Brahman, because that is what is very tempting to accept or tempting to believe, and therefore that is being refuted. So asat iti yat kalpate tadana vidyate atah asatah brahmana pratyogitum bhedovan nasambhavati. You cannot talk about any asat rupasya vastunaha na swatantra satta bhavaha tad buddhi pratyamatram kalpitam. It's just an intellectual imagination. It's just an intellectual imagination because the snake wasn't real. You cannot say the snake has been eliminated. The snake has been driven out. There was no snake as such. It was a rope. What do you mean by that you have driven out the snake? Did it even exist? No. Therefore, yatharajo sarvabhasasya vastavika sattvam nasti. There is no fundamental existence of the snake in the rope. Tatha eva brahmana bhinnam kinchidapi satyam asti iti na sambhavati. Similarly, if at all, anything other than Brahman, the rope is always there. You cannot say, I saw a snake, and that snake is different from the rope. Both existed. Snake never existed. It's on imagination only. Similarly, the Jagat, all that we see, which are acceptable to our senses, we are dealing at the level of phenomenal reality. Fundamentally, there is just one unified, absolute conscious reality called the Brahman. Okay? Therefore, I don't want to push this point any further. I hope we have all understood it. Okay? And we'll graduate to the next sloka. And for that, I have to share again the Kalyana Piyusha thing and have a look at it. Uktartham eva dridhikurvan prasanga sangatya vainasika mata nirasana purvakam aha ekamiti. Now you have the Nyayikas. Okay, these are called Vainasikas because they accept that they are called the Arambhavadis. There was nothing and then there is reality. But if you ask smart physicists today, what was there before the Big Bang? Many of them just avoid the question. You say, we don't know. We can tell you a story starting with the Big Bang. What was there before is the question. If there was nothing before the Big Bang, how Big Bang happened? With what? With what? You're imagining that it's tiny fraction of an atom when the Big Bang happened. It was an extremely subtle subtle reality, where there was an explosive expansion of the universe out of that. It's a very good story. I'm not refuting it. But if somebody asks, where from was that action of an atom out of which the Big Bang happened? What was there before? The Nyayakas have no problem. They will say, yeah, it's quite possible. So they imagine atoms like you have Leibniz in the Western philosophy. He imagines nomads. And you had Democritus, who are also talking about atoms. The Nyayakas also talk about atoms, but then we are taught in school about Democritus and Leibniz. We are not told so much about Kanda. And that is a lot to do with the knowledge systems we have because of the colonial influence. We have denied ourselves a chance to look back into our own knowledge tradition. So what the Nayakas imagine is that these atoms are a permanent reality. They are nitya. They all the time exist. And there is a transcendental God. They have an argument there cannot be multiple gods because there will be confusion among these gods, and therefore God is one. They don't accept these religious interpretation of multiplicity of gods. No. Ishvara, the supernatural entity who creates this whole universe, is just one. But he creates this reality that we deal with out of what? What are the material cause? They say the atoms. And who created the atoms? He said, don't ask that question. We accept them as perennial. They are nitya. And therefore, when you have a ghata made out of mitti or clay, they would say the ghata came into being out of nothing. There was clay. Clay became... Now, there are Satkaryavadis, which are called this Sankhya Mata. Satkaryavada means the cause was present and it became an effect. The Karya, the consciousness, was hidden. Curd is hidden in milk. Ghee is hidden in butter. Purified butter is hidden in milk. There was purified butter in the milk, and therefore you could bring it out. If there was no material cause, you cannot talk about a consequence. It cannot happen. It has to have. So one is Arambhavada or called Asatkaryavada. It wasn't there, it came into being. The other one is Satkaryavada. The cause was there. The effect is essentially a modification of the cause, a transformation of the causal reality into a consequential reality, a certain outcome. It's a metamorphosis of this causal form. That is what is the Sankhya Mata. That is what the Vedantins accept. With a twist to the story, what is that? The Sankhyas believe that this metamorphosis or this transformation is real. They are realists. Out of there's some primitive reality out of which this whole sansara has come. And what is that? The Prakriti. She has created this whole universe, but it is Jada Rupa. Purusha is consciousness. Purusha is in multiples. Number of Purushas, consciousness. And this Prakriti creates things of the whole universe for bhoga and apavarga, for experience and liberation and enlightenment. So if you look at all the Devi bhajans, they say bhakti mukti pradayini. Bhukti and a mukti, both. That's what Prakriti provides. It performs a dance in order to give you experience of samsara, but also tell you that this is delusional and you have bhoga. Immediately you realize, who am I? Am I in all this? No, I'm different. Then you get liberated. That is Sankhya philosophy. Vedantins say that this metamorphosis, this modification of the primeval reality is not real. It is a projection. It is Vivarta Parinamavada. Vivarta is some kind of a apparent modification. The real remains real. There is no change in it. However, it can manifest, it can appear as different. And that is what is Srishti. Srishti is fundamentally not real in Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta. Fundamentally not real. Phenomenally real. They make a concession. They say, yeah, phenomenal reality is a reality which is phenomenal. Dream reality is a reality which is there in the dream state. They're not denying some reality to the dream reality. But that's not real in the real sense. Okay, coming back to it, now they theorization as there is God, there's creation, and there is this whole universe created by this Godhead. Sankaracharya, Advaita Vedantins, quoting the Upanishads, would like to explain your argumentation has a lot of loopholes, and we can help you understand and grasp the reality much better. And what is that? He's trying to say, Ekameva dvitiyam sat siddhamatra tu kechana bihvala asade vedam pura siddhitya vannayan. He's saying the truth of the matter is, the knowledgeable, sulje hue, as they say in Hindi, the ones who are a little mature, they know that everything was one. Sadeva Somya idam agra asit. It was Sat. Then he says, Asadeva Somya idam agra asit. Why Asat? Because it was not visible. The invisible, the avyakrita became vyakrita. The unmanifest became manifest. Manifestation is only assumption of names and forms. Nothing else. Therefore, it's essentially a projection. In a certain sense, is something which through our senses we consider to be real. And whatever is acceptable to our senses may not be absolutely real. Like the rainbow, like the stick which bends when it is immersed in water, not fundamentally real. We cannot see them. Whatever is observed is false. For the Advaita Vedantin, non-dualist Vedantin, whatever is perceived is false. Why? Like dreams. Don't you see dreams? Are they real? Then why do you think whatever you see has to be acceptable as real? What is the distinction between, but dreams are not intersubjective. Our phenomenal reality is intersubjective. Yeah, we grant it slightly higher status. We call it phenomenal reality. Let's not have a negotiation that this is real. No, real is only one. Ekam eva advitiyam sat siddham. That has been established in the Upanishads. Atra tu kechana. This is what the Vedantins say. However, there are other people whom the Vidyaranya, the author of this text, say bihvala asadevedam. But there are a few people who are drunk with the philosophical logic of their own tradition. They're deluded. They are bihwalaha. What is bihwala? Is somebody whose mind has been hijacked. He's possessed by his own conviction, which may not be real. You know, there's a beautiful way in which Plato mentions that when whatever you believe is unable to enter into a marriage with logos, with logic, remains as prejudice. Belief becomes true belief when belief is able to marry logic, argument, reasonableness. So your belief is reasonable enough, it'll remain a presumption. It's a prejudice. Similarly, the belief of the Nyayikas, which appears to be logically very sound, the Advaita Vedantin refers to them as deluded by their own sophisticated ways of argumentation, where they are unable to see the insights available in the Upanishads, which again and again say, Sadeva Somya Idamagra Ashete, Ekameva Advitiyam. It's one without a second. But they don't pay much attention to it. Why? Because they think their power of logic is much stronger. Why should they at all look at the Upanishads? So they give more importance to their own rational argumentation, and therefore they're deluded. Bihwala asadevedam. It's all false, out of which this whole sansara has manifested. Pura asid. So pura idam sarvam asad eva asid. all this didn't exist. It wasn't there. So for them, Pralaya Kala, of course, they accept the atoms are there, but this whole reality Srishti wasn't there because they are Arambhavadis. There is no ghata in clay. But for a Satkaryavadi, for a Vedanti, without clay, there cannot be a zar. It cannot be a pot. So a clay pot is made out of clay. So you cannot say the pot wasn't there. Pot was there, but the form wasn't there. You look at this great sculptor, Rodin, who used to believe that if you have a stone piece, there's a beautiful girl hiding in it. The idea is to chisel her out, beauty, give her expression. She's already there. How can I create a girl if she didn't exist inside that piece of rock? Satkaryavada. Therefore, he's saying, Evam Bihwala Asadevedam Pura Asid Iti Avarnayan. How are they deluded? Because they conclude that all this initially did not exist. Evam Sadavastu Ekameva Advitiyam Swagata Sajatiya Vijatiya Veda Rahita Rahitavi iti Rahitam iti Siddham. Because Rahitam iti Siddham. There is a printing not very clear. So the Brahman is Swagata Sajatiya Vijatiya Veda Rahitam. Brahma is anyway Napunshaka. So is without Swagata Veda in soul and parts. Sajatiya Veda, you don't have two Brahmans. There cannot be two numbers of Brahmans of the same class. There is no Bijatiya Veda. Brahman is Sat. It's not Asat. So you cannot say that Sat and Asat can be Bijatiya Vedavan. No, that's not possible. Therefore, Rahitam iti Siddham, that is established. Tathapi Atasmin Stale, even then, in this, Atra Asmin Stale, in our case, tu Kechana Vainasikaha Bihalaha. Some Vinasavadis who accept that the reality didn't exist during Pralaya Kala. Sad Yukti Parigyana Sunyaha. Why are they Bifalaha? Because they are unable to rely on appropriate ways of argumentation. Sad Yukti Jnana Shunyaha. They don't have knowledge of what is a real good argument. Idam Jagan Nama Rupatmakam Pura Sristehe. This sansara with names and forms before the creation. Prag asad eva asite iti avarnayan. It didn't exist. Where did you get this? Where did you get this Srishti? No, it didn't exist. God created it out of atoms. That is what they say. Okay. Now we'll go to the. I'll just sort of push it out, and we'll look at the other argumentation about it. So this is how there is no further argument. The only argument is that these Nyayikas are kind of seen as mohagrastas. They're deluded. They're in a state of trance. It's like some innocent young man who's sitting in a business class seat, and then the air hostess is extra kind and affectionate, serves him soup and fruit juice, and if he takes alcohol, wine and everything, and she comes to him 5 times. This boy is traveling for the first time abroad in a business class ticket. I mean, thankfully his dad, or maybe he's being invited to a conference where they're giving you a business class ticket. He's pampered by the air hostess, smiles at him several times, and he starts believing, oh my God, she loves me. Delusional. Mohagrastaha. It's just delusional. It has no reality. She's just doing her duty. She's being good to you. And then this boy loses his balance, and then in the newspaper we read some funny story. This is what happens. Therefore, idam jagat purvam asadeva asit. That is the argument they're going to say, but that is not true. That it doesn't have any real truth to it, because in the Chandogya Upanishad, he says Sadeva Somya Idamagra Asid in the sloka mantra number 621. Okay? Therefore, this Shruti Vakya is the proof that ekameva advitiyam sad siddham. That is why he's saying this is one and without a second. Okay. So what do we establish here? We are establishing by quoting this Shruti Vakya, the Brahman is Advaita Swarupa. It doesn't have any duality. It's completely non-dual. And after that, you have the Asatkaryavadis, the Nyayayikas. They are being made fun of, where they're saying they are kind of tiraskritaha. You are mocking at them. There is a saying in Sanskrit that a wise man never indulges in any ninda or apavada of somebody else, except when such ninda is used for education, for motivating somebody else, for the betterment of humanity. You make fun of a political leader or a historical figure, not for the heck of it, not for political gain, but you should do it like we do about Hitler or about Stalin or any other person. You do it only when you're trying to reinforce people's faith, people's conviction about human rights, about liberal values, about the power of goodness, the power of tolerance over intolerance in the name of justice and blah, blah, blah. Right? Therefore, he's saying that these Nyayayikas, this ninda of the Nyayayikas, or the tiraskar of the Nyayayikas, is not to reject them, dismiss them, in order to reorient our consciousness towards the ultimate truth, ultimate insight in the Upanishads. Therefore, he's saying, Bihwalaha asadeva idam pura asit iti avarnayan. This is how they talk about it. This is Shastra Virodhi. This is contrary to what the Upanishads have said. Okay? Because out of what doesn't exist, how can you suddenly have what exists? You see, that is the strong logical point. So how can you have what is asti, what exists, out of what is nasti, which wasn't there? That is how they are kind of considered to be bhrantaha. That means they are deluded in a complete sense. We'll go to the next sloka. We have time, and therefore we'll try to progress as much as we can. Then there is another set of people, including these Nyayayikas, but you can also have the Bhaktas, the devotional people. They are also unable to accept the Advaita Vedanta, a follower of Jesus Christ. One of the powerful arguments they make against Advaita Vedanta, they had several such arguments with Swami Vivekananda in the West, is that, look here, we have a personal God, but your Advaita Vedanta is too dry. It's intellectually very good, but there is no love in it. There is no real divine relationship between the human being and the God that he has, the personal God. So who will help you in moments of distress? Who is going to give you support? Whom do you relate to? Whom do you look for, turn to for guidance, for inspiration, for protection? You're missing out on that. We see ourselves as children of God or as devotees of Lord Jesus. Jesus is the Son of the Father, the Supreme Being, and through Jesus, who sacrificed his life for us, we stay connected with the Father. What about you? You're talking about there's nothing called Father, Son, all that. Oh, of course, you have some deities. Oh, fine, but that's completely, you're idolaters. This is idolatry. Either way, the personal God thing is articulated in a way in which only that particular tradition is the valid tradition. So also in Islam. In case of the Buddhists, they take it in a different direction, where they are also non-dualists, the Advaita Vedantists, but they don't at all talk about God. they don't talk about the Upanishadic insights. They take it in a different direction, and therefore there will be another course of argumentation with the Buddhists that we'll enter into after this. So here what he's trying to do, why some people are scared of the very idea of non-dual absolute reality. What happens to my bhakti? I do Hanuman Chalisa every morning. I do Bhagavati Upasana. Diwali is coming. I'm going to do Kali Puja, or I'm going to do worship of Lord Ganesh and Lakshmi, depending on where you are. If you're in Ayodhya, you're celebrating return of Lord Ram to Ayodhya. And what about this Advaita Vedanta? There is no Ram, no Sita, no Durga, no Ganeshji, no Lakshmi, no Shiva, no Vishnu. It's Advaita. No Bhakta, no Bhagavan. No devotee, no devotion. There is this tripity. Dhyana, Dhyata, and Dhyeya. What do you meditate on? Who is meditating? And what is happening in meditation? This tripartite division of the consciousness isn't there. There is only one undivided, pure reality, pure consciousness. That is very frightening. How to deal with it? Quite a few students of Vedanta, when we started this Vedanta Satsang online during Corona, a lot of them actually stopped after coming because they thought this Vedanta teaching will destroy their prayer and they will lose their devotional attachment to God because they started questioning. Because, in the initial stages, it's a little like either or. It's not a very integral understanding of it. So we have to go slowly. And the best path I keep saying is, in fact, if you look at Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, who accepts all the four paths have to be integrated, they're all relevant. The ultimate truth stays. However, to reach there, you have to do all other practices. There is no refutation as such. There is an ultimate adherence to the ultimate truth. One is not one finger, two is not two fingers, three is not three fingers, yet the mother, while introducing the baby to the number system, says 1, 2, 3, 4, using fingers. After some time, the fingers cease to be relevant. And the baby is able to understand what's 1, 2, 3, 4. We are able to capture a lot of complex theories, isn't it? Similarly, the ultimate Brahman is subject matter of what? Vichara, contemplation. You cannot do dhyana of course, there is Nirguna Brahma Upasana. That's also going to come here. But that's just a stage. The ultimate thing is a contemplative conviction that we have. That is what is going to liberate us. Therefore, we have to remove what is called sansaya, viparjaya. Sansaya is doubt, viparjaya is believing in exact opposite. Then asambhavana and viparita bhavana. So viparjaya is vranti, asambhavana, how is it possible? Viparita bhavana is kind of returning, relapsing into some kind of a dualism. And we are supposed to overcome all these through Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana. Listen, understand the meaning of the sentences, what is being conveyed here, and then try to remove the arguments which try to refute the meaning conveyed through positive argumentation. Having done that, you have to also get rid of asambhavana, the doubt, how is it possible? Viparita bhavana, no, this alone is real. These are all comforting things. In this process, there would be a moment where there is fear of this ultimate truth. Fear is part of our existence. It's beautiful. Huh? Look at it. So the famous British philosopher Thomas Hobbes writes, my mother gave birth to twins, I and fear. Because the moment the individual is born, he cries aloud. There's a fear, difficulty to accept the freedom which the baby achieves the moment it's delivered. Fear is part of human existence. Only self-awareness and knowledge can help us get rid of that fear. And when can we get rid of fear? when we are not scared of anything else. And when does that happen? When there is absolute equanimity and there is no cause of fear. The cause of fear is for Advaita Vedanta is in dualism. You have gold, somebody is going to take it away. You are a girl, somebody might misbehave with you. You are alone. You are a man, somebody might snatch away your purse or your phone. Dvetad bhayo upajayate. Fear emerges out of duality. So all kinds of dualities, they are pregnant with different kinds of fears. Advaita thing, the non-dual reality, the non-dual truth, consciousness, and bliss is the mother of liberation of freedom. It's bhayasunya. It's free from all kinds of anxieties, all kinds of apprehensions. However, it's like a boy is very lonely. One fine morning, he was craving for the attention of a certain girl. Let's imagine, because it's easy to give that kind of an so in the workplace. And then one day he finds out that girl likes him. He panics. He was not prepared for it. Or vice versa, he panics. You are applying for a job, but when you get that job, a new assignment, when you're going to go and join and assume the duties, you have an element of apprehension, anxiety. And Freud, in one of his essays, I'm forgetting the exact title of the essay, he writes, why some people are unable to enjoy the success they were craving for. There's a kind of fear of the unknown, fear of a new challenge, a new responsibility. So it's all about fear. Why am I mentioning about all this? When a person graduates to that truth, consciousness, and bliss, there is no comfort zone of in Golakadhama, there's going to be Lord Vishnu protecting me. I'm going to dance with him. I can drink as much milk. And then Radharani will be there smiling at me. I'm going to be in Shivaloka. Lord Ganeshji can clarify all my doubts. And Lord Kartika will protect me because he's the fighter. He's the captain of the, Devaloka. And then Ma is there, Annapurna Devi. The Divine Mother is going to feed me. And the Supreme Father, Lord Shiva, you imagine how happy am I? Either way, these are all stories. This comfort is not there in Advaita Vedanta, in the ultimate stage. This is being conveyed in this sloka. Therefore, I had to give a long introduction to it. What is the sloka? Let's look at it. Magnasyabdhau yatha kshani bihvalani tatha syadhi Akhandeka rasam sritva nisprachara bhivedyataha. Why does this Nyayika or this traditional Vaishnava or Shaiva or Shakta gets frightened of Advaita Vedanta? He's giving an example. When a person drowns in the ocean, in water, then his senses become useless because he cannot see anything. His senses don't work. He gets frightened in that darkness below the water level, below the surface level. Similarly, when a person enters into that non-dual state of self-awareness, there is no agency and there is nothing to meditate on. This tripartite division of the meditator, the meditation, and the object of meditation, that sort of dissolves into one unified field of consciousness. There is a fear of what happens to the bhakta. What happens to me if I get liberated? I'm going to die? I'll not exist? That's fear. That is what he's saying. Magnasya abdhau yatha kshani bihvalani tatha asyadhihi. Like our senses get bewildered when we get drowned and submerged in water. Similarly, tatha asya vainasikasya dhihi, the buddhi of a person who is more comfortable with dualism. Akhanda eka rasam sritva, when he listens to the Upanishadic statements, that Brahman is one unified reality, nisprachara bibheti ataha, then that division is no more there in the consciousness. So I am not going to do meditation anymore. What happens to my meditation after Brahmagyana? No more meditation, no more bhajan, no more kirtan. What do you say? There's no God. Oh, no, I don't want to go there. I'm sorry. He signs off. He's saying, no, I'm not going to join your Vedanta class. Therefore, he's saying that is why he gets. Now, we'll elaborate it further when we reassemble. Let's quickly look at this commentary. Yatha akhanda jale avadhu magnasya akhyani indriyani bifalani bhayavistani ata ativa chanchalani bhavanti. Our senses become super active and bewildered and restless when we get submerged in water. Similarly, tatha asya vainasikasya, this Nyayaka philosopher, is being introduced to the Vedantic wisdom. He gets frightened.